Good afternoon, everyone. Hello. I'm joining you from my home here in Baltimore, Maryland, and we're going to get started with our panels in just a few moments. In advent of that, I want to share a few resources with you from the Maryland State Department of Education. The network of Maryland Fine Arts Supervisors have produced two very important reports. These are two reports that we will be referring to throughout our session today. And the first is the Arts Together Planning Guidance for Arts Educators in Maryland Public Schools, a COVID-19 response and path forward. If you're looking for information on sanitization, what it may look like to physically distance in a classroom, what it may look like around supply sharing or scheduling, please refer to this report. It's divided into sections by arts discipline, and each week we've been bringing a art discipline specific panel to you to kind of discuss further some of the ideas in this report. The second report is the social emotional learning through the arts report. And this report gives us a strong understanding, a strong demonstration of the ways that arts learning experiences can build SEL competence for students. There is a section in the back of the report, makes up the most of the report, which looks at each arts discipline, all 5 disciplines: music, dance, theater, visual art, media arts. We have elementary and secondary examples of an arts learning experience and the different ways that students and teachers' behaviors and actions help to develop SEL competence. It's not to be missed. So please you can download these documents at msdefinearts.org. Our website has both documents there. They have been downloaded already in 45 states. They've begun to be referenced in the professional association's new guides around school openings. And this report, most importantly, will be updated every 30 days throughout the pandemic and recovery. So you can anticipate that the report will have the up-to-the-minute resources and information available for arts educators. The SEL report was published 2 weeks ago and has already started to spread all around the globe, really, looking at those key learnings around arts experiences. And right before we begin, I want to share that next Tuesday, you can visit our website and we will have uploaded a new professional learning catalog for the summer. We have 130 hours of professional learning, all available free. You can accumulate as many courses and workshops and experiences that you'd like and use those to add up together to culminate in CPD credits. Every 15 hours equals 1 CPD credit. So that's the first time we've been able to offer something in this way through MSDE. We're really excited about it. We'll be offering workshops in SEL, mental health, anti-racist and anti-bias arts education, looking at culturally responsive arts education, how to build relationships and build collaborative structures in your online and remote classroom and learning. And of course, student voice and agency. So please, we hope that you'll join us this summer. We have an incredible panel of theater and education leaders today who will be sharing their ideas and strategies for planning and reimagining the upcoming year during the pandemic. Each panel will last about 15 minutes. We're really lucky to have such a wide range and diversity of leaders to present to you today, and I'm going to get started. Our first panel, and oh, that's the other thing I wanted to mention. Please do keep populating that chat. You can leave questions in the chat, things that we don't get to. It helps us to know ways that we can just support you further. So if there's questions that you have, pop them in the chat. We download the chat transcript, anything that's not addressed today. We will prepare new resources, whether it's another webinar or a guidance document to help answer those questions. So first, we have Dr. Patricia Payne, the Fine Arts Instructional Specialist, Fine Arts Instructional Supervisor, and Theater Supervisor for Prince George's County Public Schools. We also have Alan Price, the Theater Director at Patuxent High School in Calvert County Public Schools. And we also have joining us Paul Diem, the Department Chair of Theater at George Washington Carver Center for Arts and Technology of Baltimore County Public Schools. Hello, Dr. Payne. How are you?
Hello, how are you?
Great, great. Good to see you. Hello, Alan.
Hello.
Great. Where are you joining us from? Are you where are you? Down in Calvert?
Yes.
Okay, way down south. All right, so we've got people all around the Beltway and all around the state here, and Paul is joining us from Baltimore. So I'm going to start with you, Dr. Payne. Due to COVID-19 and the rapid closures of Maryland schools, all across Maryland launched continuity of learning plans. And we know that the arts are essential content and are part of a well-rounded education in Maryland. Dr. Payne, from where you sit in Prince George's, what are the benefits of making sure that theater education continues during continuity of learning?
So there are multiple benefits of theater education during continuity of learning. And we know that theater inherently builds confidence, self-confidence. It fosters creativity, helps develop specific skills such as communication, improvisation, and adaptation, just to name a few. So let me give you some examples of what students did here in Prince George's County. When it was time to submit their assignments, they looked around their homes for household items that they could use for props and costumes when it was time for them to do their assignments. So they didn't have to worry about going out and buying things, or I can't get to my prop closet at my school. So they just used what they had at home. They asked family members to become actors and actresses. So they used those family members to become the characters in their stories. They even used pets. I heard of a story where a student used the pet dog as one of the characters, even in costume, as one of the characters in their story. They became collaborators with their parents. Parents became increasingly involved in what students were doing, and even more so than they would have been on a regular basis. And even though they had limited space and limited areas to perform, they turned their bedrooms, their kitchens, their living rooms, their garages, their decks, all of the areas that they could find into stages, and they performed and did whatever they had to do their assignments. Teachers collaborated as well. Our teachers came together and created a Google Drive that everyone contributed to and had access to, and it had resources, lesson seeds, hyperlinks, all of the things that teachers would need to create their own lessons as they kind of went through this whole last quarter, which was kind of interesting. But everyone supported each other through that Google Drive. And of course, we had our weekly check-ins. And back to the students, we know that that students find their voice through theater. And so through theater, they're able to express their hopes, their fears, anything, any expression, any emotion that they have inside. Theater helps them to just make it visible for everyone else.
Oh, that's terrific. I love hearing those stories about the work of students and teachers and the way that people were able to really overcome. Paul, what are you seeing over in Baltimore County? Why is theater so important to continue, even during remote learning?
Well, I think at Carver, one thing that we talk about a lot is the same ways that you can use your body and use your emotional response to help trigger honest emotion on stage. You can also use to de-escalate when you are in times where you're struggling. So the same, through like Grotowski's methods of finding places in your body to trigger where you store your emotion, you can also use that to de-escalate. So if you feel, sorrow in the left side of your chest, know that that's where you hold it. So when you're feeling that, you can also de-escalate it. We've talked about that a lot over this time, especially dealing with anxiety. But what's actually been a real boon to the actual theater education in this time for us, especially with our freshmen, is as we're going through some Stanislavski training. And so much of that is about being aware of your body and your senses at different times, or at least being aware of your body and your senses. And the best way to get to that is through a new experience or experiencing an old experience a new way, which is what all of our students are doing right now. And so we've really seen some big growth in different ways than we would normally see in the classroom. And then with those freshmen, actually it was a stroke of kismet, as it happened, is that we were already 1 week after we dismissed on the 13th, they had a new script due, which is Jackie Sibbles Drury's Social Creatures, which happens to be a play about a pandemic. So it was a very they were able to draw some real world comparisons in a very much it's a comedy play, but to find some real world connections and find, I think, a different way of dealing with their isolation as they saw it reflected through their characters and their script. So it was very interesting.
Absolutely. So what you're really, I'm hearing that's such a rich answer, and you're really kind of speaking to that social emotional learning that is a part, right, around self-management, self-discovery, and all of those different areas around SEL competence that can occur intrinsically, the way that arts learning is just naturally aligned as we discover new things about ourselves and also new ways to connect with the world around us.
Absolutely. I mean, and it comes to a root that we always say in classes is that, an actor and a character are like being a good mechanic and a good car. And if you don't have a good mechanic, your car can't run. No matter how beautiful your Ferrari is, it can't run unless you have a good mechanic. And so we train that in our actors as well, as to make sure they're taking care of themselves so that they can be vulnerable on stage when they need to be.
That's fantastic. I love hearing that such wonderful things are happening at my alma mater over at GWCCAT.
That's right.
Alan, will you tell us what's happening down in Calvert? How are you seeing theater as a benefit to your students during continuity of learning?
Oh, let's go back a little bit. I think it was that Thursday. We're all pretty much, everyone, the whole state of Maryland was probably in like some form of rehearsal when they canceled school for 2 weeks, which was great for the rehearsal. Things just went so well after that moment. And, the kids are all afraid of what's the future of the show? What is just the general future of life? Mm-hmm. And so it reminded me of that Toni Morrison quote about now is the time that artists get to work. And I butchered it totally for them, but it's about the healing process and all that. And so I was talking with the kids, and then I said, okay, tomorrow, Friday, improv team during our 1 hour lunch, you're going to do a pandemic themed show. Go home, do some research, come back tomorrow. And there's a really, hi Kat, interesting experience, because you're watching, the kids, they're starting to develop their scenes, and the audience is throwing out suggestions. And you got reminded of the two basic things that we tend to teach with any form of art, which is expression and connection. Mm. So, the connection between your work and also the audience that's involved. And so you're watching these two groups come together and really express their thoughts about their future, their fears, and just kind of play around with them, and then also simultaneously laugh at the same time. And that kind of helped me in guiding when I was developing lessons, is constantly trying to find ways to make sure the kids are expressing, but also finding ways for them to connect still, because that's such an important part to get through the pandemic, is still because we're all separated and isolated from each other. So which spawned a nice comedy night that we did later on. Well, it was mostly funny, but that was,
valleys. Yeah, comedy's really taken on a new depth, right? In the middle of a pandemic, I would imagine your students are learning new depths to their comedy, right? Ways to share stories.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that makes me think too, is so many artists have really opened their homes to us. One of my favorite things that occurred a couple weeks ago, Jill Scott and Erykah Badu opened their homes and played through their catalog for us and talked through that creative process. I've seen plays that I would never have had access to, right, that have been displayed in full length online. So companies and folks have just really been opening their homes and their catalogs to share stories of the present, which is very exciting. A point of this terrible time is the excitement of finding human connection through art making. Paul, will you tell us what are the ways you've seen your students really use creative or artistic responses to share stories?
Absolutely. Our big kind of culminating event for our senior actors is actually the very last thing that happens before they graduate in the building up for any senior, is called the Senior Capstone Acting Night. And throughout the year, students are writing original solo theater pieces in all different genres that culminates in what is a 15-minute original solo piece that they act, direct, design, the whole deal. Obviously, we weren't in school on May 22nd for that to happen. And so they all filmed them at home. And so they really used, instead of having 15 minutes of an actor bear on stage, which is a really interesting and intimate experience, it was intimate a different way because we saw these performers in their homes, usually, sometimes outside. But it use this whole new idea where they're able to edit and do some things using technology to really bring their stories out. And some of them were pieces they were working on prior to when we left, which still were relevant to them. Some of them were brand new pieces. I know there was a piece that a student wrote called Zoom University. It was all about him watching his own mother teach online and the struggles she had to get the computer to work. And so he created an entire character where 5 minutes of his piece was the character not knowing the computer was on and drinking coffee and clipping his nails, and just a very interesting endurance piece that he did while the character thinks he's showing a video and you can see him the whole time. Just very smart stuff. And also in a movement class, which teaching movement over the computer is quite a challenge. But I encourage students, I said, for your final, I want you to create something that uses all the skills we've worked on this year to talk about either your 4-year journey or what is happening right now. And just the intimacy and vulnerability that students were able to bring to the screen was really just lovely. And in fact, sometimes really uncomfortable to watch on a computer screen. Like to see that, I was like, oh, I need to take a break. You've been watching for 3 or 4 minutes. I need to pause this and actually step away for a minute. And that's the first time I've ever had an experience like that. So it was some really interesting and powerful.
Wow, some real visceral work coming out of students. Great. Dr. Payne, what about for you? Are you seeing representations of students sharing their stories in Prince George's?
Absolutely. And I want to say one more thing about teachers, because I think I need to keep shouting out my teachers.
Please do.
One of the things that they said that they experienced and enjoyed was they were able to get closer to the students during this time, because in class, it doesn't allow you time to just connect and go off and, talk about everything. And when students signed on, some of them just wanted to talk, like, how are you? What are you doing? Kind of thing. So they were able to ask, get to know the teacher, and the teacher was able to get to know them. And everything in between. There were all kinds of questions that they shared with each other. And it was just interesting, the teacher said, to find how vulnerable the students were and how much they wanted that human contact and how much they missed them. So, yeah, so that's what the pandemic did for them. So now back to what the students did. Absolutely. Creatively. They used their computers. If they had access to the computers, they used them to draw set designs. They took pictures of those designs and uploaded them as part of their assignments. They also used their computers to draw scenes and create cartoon stories to help say what they wanted to say. So it was like a cartoon illustration of what their story was about.
That's fantastic.
They used choice boards to identify assignments and then practice problem solving. They wrote poetry. They wrote and performed monologues. They wrote scripts to respond to the pandemic and to the social justice issues, and also to reflect on and share their emotional state and what they were feeling at the time. Students created characters who helped them find their voice and were reflective of the times. For example, one teacher shared with me that his students read a story about people stranded on a COVID ship. And by the way, this writing prompt came from one of the many companies that offered us free resources during the pandemic. So teachers were able to take advantage of those. So the students were to create stories or scripts about what they thought, who they thought might be on that ship. And so they wrote short screenplays about what could be happening and who the people were that were on the ship. They also wrote short screenplays reflecting what they thought were issues facing teens and students of all ages during this time. And some of them they were able to perform, and others they just read.
Wow.
So we found that our students have been resilient, resourceful, innovative, creative, and courageous throughout this whole thing. And they've continued to grow as artists and as global citizens.
That's really fantastic. We've reached the end of our time for this panel, and I just want to thank the three of you for your leadership, for your vision, for the creativity that you've used to keep each other going as a theater education community, and of course, to impact students during this time. So thank you three for visiting with us from your homes, and we look forward to hearing what's next on the horizon from all three of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's so important. Dr. Payne brought up mention of the amazing number of arts organizations in the state and, of course, all around the world that stepped up and provided free resources for teachers to use. A couple weeks ago, we had Stephanie Ibarra, the artistic director of Baltimore Center Stage, come and do an online professional development workshop for free. And we did a table read with Stephanie Ibarra. It was one of the best days. It was really fantastic. And we got to see theater teachers reading plays that have been written specifically to be performed online together through that Play at Home series. So there's so many opportunities. Hi, April. How are you?
Hello, everyone.
Hi. So April is the theater director of Northeast High School up there in Cecil County. Cecil County Public Schools. So the MSDE Maryland Together report shares that Maryland schools will look very different in fall 2020. Arts instruction is an essential part of a public school education in Maryland, and schools should continue to make sure that arts education continues in distance learning, hybrid learning, and in-person learning models. The Network of Maryland Fine Arts Supervisors prepared a collaborative document to support fine arts programs in Maryland public schools. And our next guest, April Fritz, was an instrumental part of that document, of the creation of that document. The document, Arts Together, is meant to be shared with all arts education stakeholders and used to launch arts educators into planning for the year ahead, with the understanding that each local school system will have its own procedures and models based on the nature of this pandemic. The report outlines 5 guiding principles on page 7 in an executive summary. April, fine arts educators should continue to teach in their content. Why is that important?
Well, that's one of those things at first you're like, well, of course they should. Like, why is that even a conversation? But then you have to really get into what happens when resources are running low and people are operating in a mode they've never operated in before. And do they start cutting places and going directions that maybe they shouldn't? And one of the things that we put in the Arts Together document is that fine arts education is a right and not a privilege. And that's something that we always have to remember during this time where inequity is just blatant in so many parts of our society, that all of our kids deserve to have highly certified teachers in all of their content areas. And that's true. I could never teach science, ever. Like, it's not just that I don't want to, I really can't. And that's true for all of those content areas. And we can't expect our kids to meet the standards that they're meant to meet by the time they graduate from high school if they don't have highly certified teachers in each of the content areas. And we are still required during a pandemic to make sure we're meeting those standards. So we've got to keep those teachers in there.
Absolutely, April. Absolutely. And the next piece of the executive summary lays out that curriculum options need to be available in all artistic processes, and they can be delivered in all environments. You know, what we discovered through trial and error across the state was that all 4 artistic processes, so creating, performing, responding, and connecting, can be delivered in hybrid, in-person, and remote levels of instruction, the models of instruction. I think a lot of the performing arts focus has been on, if we are in a hybrid place, you might want to concentrate the performing aspects, right? The totality aspects happening in person, and perhaps the preparation, the creating, the responding, and the connecting could happen in the online or remote environment. But it's important that we make sure that children still receive a robust arts education, which includes all 4 artistic processes. April, the next piece in our executive summary states that sharing student work should continue, of course, with modifications for digital platforms or physical distancing. Why is it so crucial that we continue to allow students to perform work?
That definitely links right back to the first panel. Like, kids need to be able to tell their stories. And theater is about telling our stories, and they need to be able to connect to each other through telling our stories. And, you know, we have all kinds of examples where kids are sharing their work back, whether it's with just a single teacher or they're in a platform where they get to share with an entire class digitally. And we're seeing them do things we didn't get to see in face-to-face classrooms. And that piece is amazing. And of course, we miss face-to-face classrooms, but to have this whole other piece that happens through the sharing of work that we've never dealt with before is really beautiful at times. You know, seeing kids write monologues about something that's super intense that they know only you're going to see as the teacher who's getting that work, and that they don't have to share it with the whole class, allows them to do something totally different. The arts, all of the arts, are about sharing and about building that community through our art form, and we can't really do that in isolation. They need to be able to share their work. They need to be able to share it with their directors, with their teachers, with their communities, with their classes. They need that collective social experience. It's got to happen at that larger level in order to meet the standards and to find their passion and to maintain their joy in education.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The next element here is that teachers and staff need training in proper sanitization of materials and physical spaces. What's become so clear is that the nature of this pandemic, for the first time really in our state, something will be happening, and there could be different procedures and regulations in one part of our state than another part of our state. Some of our largest counties may have different operating procedures in the north and the south. And so what's so important is that we want to make sure that all arts educators are receiving that training. And that training and all of that information will come directly from local school systems based on the needs of those localities, really. And so while not unique to arts disciplines, the use of supplies and materials in a fine arts classroom, as well as the maintenance of each physical classroom, really require clear guidelines, clear procedures, really in order to protect against virus transmission. And so with guidance from local administrators and officials and your fine arts supervisor, school leaders, teachers, and all stakeholders really need to work together to develop a plan using the guidance, of course, from our Arts Together report, which is really fundamentally based in the CDC's guidance. But that training will be really a key part of what happens and takes place before school opens in the fall. So April, it's so important that we support student engagement in and through the arts. And why is that a critical part of making sure that arts engagement continues in education?
I can personally say, as a parent of a 16 and 17-year-old who are very involved in the arts, those were the only classes they were actually interested in doing online. So what that did during that whole 3 months was it kept them engaged in their other classes too, because they knew, oh, I need to go to choir today. Oh, well, I might as well go to AP US History while I'm at it. So that engagement that the arts kind of draws out of kids can sprinkle out into the rest of their content areas. And as we know, staying engaged during this time, if we go back into any form of online learning, is really hard. It's hard for staff. It's hard for kids. It can be exhausting for them. It can be a long, tedious, boring day of staring at a computer. And we've got to keep them engaged in order to keep them learning. Like, you must keep them engaged in order to keep them learning. So we have to have those great climates happening online. And again, we can kind of filter that out. If I can get a kid to pay attention in my Theater 4 class and be with me, and then I can say, hey, are you paying attention in calculus too? And so it's using that engagement piece that we're lucky to have maybe a little more heavily than some other content areas to help them get through all of it. They need that engagement in order to continue learning. Otherwise, they're just going to give up. They really, it's so difficult to stay engaged at this level, even for your best of your best kids. Your top honors kids really struggle to stay engaged, and we have the power to keep them there.
Absolutely. I received an email yesterday from my good colleague, Anita Lambert of Prince George's County Public Schools, that said, Maslow before Bloom's. So it's really about engaging students, right? Making sure that students are engaged in the process, that they're activated as learners before we begin to pour in new instruction. So that's a really great tip. I just want to make sure everyone is aware of the other pieces of the report. And so this report, again, is available online to download. It's been dropped. The links have been dropped in the chat. But what you'll find is that each chapter is a different arts discipline. So if you're a theater educator, what we're recommending is that you go and read the general recommendation section and then head over to the theater chapter that April was a key element of creating. So thank you for your time on that. And you'll find information about teaching and learning, maintaining distance, accommodating smaller student groups, because we know that in-person learning will be with smaller student groups, materials and supplies, how to deal with sanitization and what those recommendations are, staffing and scheduling as well. The really great part about this report, just in addition to it being available, is that it will be updated every 30 days. And so we'll have the latest information. We are all waiting for this aerosol report that our international arts community has invested in financially within the next 30 to 45 days. We're expecting those reports. When that information is ready, that tells us just how powerful aerosols can be in terms of spreading or preventing this virus. We'll share that information now with everyone. So we'll all be working through this together. And as long as we stay in contact, I think that's where we'll be strong. Thank you, April, for your work on the report.
Oh, thank you. And everybody definitely check out that document. Share it with your people. It's fantastic.
Thank you, April.
Thank
All
you.
right, I'll see you soon. It's great to talk to you today. The next panel, we just talked about how important the process of learning is over the product. And that absolutely remains true. But right now, we're going to talk a little bit about, with some of our partners, about a little bit of both of that. The ways that they're thinking, perhaps reimagining an upcoming theater season. So we're going to hear from Executive Director of Single Carrot Theater, Emily Corey. We also have Chill Kong, the Artistic Director of Adventure Theater. And we're also bringing to the stage Dr. Julian Lazarus, who's the president of the Maryland Theater Education Association. Hello, Emily.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course, we're so happy that you're here. Hello, Chill. Hello, Julian. So we're gonna dig right in. So Emily, will you tell us at Single Carrot, how are you guys reimagining, planning, repurposing your upcoming 2020-2021 theater season?
Yeah, so Single Carrot is really unique in the fact that our mission and vision is centered around socially relevant and community-driven theater. So really, we've already been exploring the different ways that we can reach audiences for a long time now. So for this season, we're exploring some outdoor spaces where audiences could move from scene to scene, taking their phones with them to have audio kind of like you would during a museum tour. And so storytelling that's just a little less linear. And our ensemble is also working on a mystery thriller play that is delivered entirely through phone and text, which, anticipating the chance for an uptick over the winter, this could be like a really safe and interesting way to experience theater. And all of these models are sort of encouraging us to think about storytelling differently, requiring us to use technology in new ways, thinking about internet-free ways of connecting to audiences. But it also means that our actors are safe during the rehearsal process as well as our audiences. And I also kind of wanted to talk a little bit about education and how we're reimagining what we're producing in that realm. So, we've really taken stock of feedback from educators and our school partnerships, and our brilliant education director, Parker Matthews, has sort of been condensing lessons into smaller videos and smaller content that could be used by teachers or students at their own convenience. So yeah, and then lastly, we're we're really trying to think about, in terms of reimagining, not just based on COVID, but really thinking about anti-racism and how we can take this time to really assess our values. Is the material that we're choosing and the season we're producing, is it anti-racist? Is our structures within our organization, are they anti-racist? And thinking about how we can be change agents, not only for the American theater, but for the Baltimore community. Like, how can theater be a tool for advocacy and community learning?
That is fantastic. Really fantastic work. Innovation happening right here in Baltimore. I love it so much. Chill. You will you tell us what's happening down there at what county are you in? Montgomery County, right?
Montgomery, yes.
Yes. What's happening at Adventure Theater? How are you guys imagining, reimagining? Tell us a little bit about even what's happening now with some of your programs.
Yeah, well, when COVID hit, we really sat down really quickly and decided that multiple things. One of them was this whole reassessment of the company again. And it really confirmed the ideals that we had set from the very beginning, but really now is that we're functionally a developmental company. So the whole idea is that we develop new audiences, develop new stories, and develop new artists, and use those stories to get out and diversify our community. And so when we flipped to digital, it was we just wanted to make sure that we are supporting what we already do for theater, and then augmenting that with technology, as opposed to the other way around. Because our conceit is that we know that it's a new art form, so let's use the art form, but make sure that that is still in support of the theatrical process, and that is particular for like the digital. The first thing we did was we had a play that we wanted to read out into the public anyway. So instead of it being a live event in person, now it became this really fun digital piece that we did online. And that augmented very quickly, and because we're pretty much the first out of the gate in our area to do a digital performance, specifically geared towards digital. And then it snowballed into now we're on our 7th presentation of readings of new works, right? So the idea is that piggybacking on what you already do and using this amazing technology to make that happen and make it actually happen faster. This particular is that we have a play that we were in development, which normally takes about 2 years, right? Called Fantastic Girl and the Math Monster. And the play itself is a genesis from STEM and girls and female students in STEM. And so so we had all this time developing it with our math students in the 2nd and 3rd grade, and math teachers who came in and discussed with us, and some of our guides. And oddly enough, this accelerated the creative process. And what usually takes about 2 years was truncated down to about 2 months. So the script actually came out really, really good on our what we call the first public presentation.
Okay.
It still needs a lot of work, of course, but we escalated the development in such a quick way, and because of these artists, we had more time. They didn't have to drive to a location to work together, so it actually allowed more time. The other thing too is we're using technology to connect in a way that we've never connected before, including like using resources that I have, right? Which is like I was able to bring a Tony Award-winning playwright, David Henry Wong, to come down and do some writing workshops with our writers locally. So now they get access to people that they look up to, get some heroes into their world, especially heroes of color. And so what we've been able to do is activate this technology in a way that like pushes our process much faster.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so now we are presenting between 1 and 3 hours of digital material a week. Including things like we have a story time show, which is we have a book writer, a diverse book, who would come in. The next one we're doing is actually Parker Looks Up. Does any of you guys know that book? It's
read it as soon as you get off the phone.
You got to read it. It is about a Black mother and a daughter who just on a day off went to the White House and happened to see the photo of Mrs. Obama, and she happened to walk in, and a magic moment of seeing the picture and seeing your hero all at the same time.
Oh, that amazing social media story, right?
Yeah. So that was turned into a book.
Turned into a book. That's right. That's right.
So we're using this time and this technology to one, bring these people who are telling these stories, right? Which a lot of these books would be great source material for plays anyway.
Yeah.
And what we're having is, books make the story. And so young family theater has always been based on a lot of these books. But the problem is the popular ones have been predominantly white and white characters. So what we're doing now is actually focusing on basically informing our audience to look at these other books and giving these source materials much more air, right? To give them a bigger audience within our direct community. And because of that, we're getting essentially between 3,000 to 5,000 households in a local area. Now, that's households. So if you consider the whole family, multiply everything by 4 or 5, and that's a giant number that we're reaching. And so what we're excited about is that now they're hearing all these great diverse stories in books that now we can use as source material for plays.
Yeah.
So it's all part of the process, right? It's like getting these original stories out, developing them, getting them seen, watching people get excited about a play.
Yep.
Like people who saw Math Monster, they love it. They can't wait to see it in public in one-on-one and see how it changes. So in a weird way, we're taking basically like the Marvel model in movies and developing little kernels of excitement all the way through. At the same time, using it as a developmental tool to get the story, to make the stories better, to get people excited about the story, and then at the same time, developing our artists along the way.
I love it. What I love from hearing from both you and Emily is this idea of a new process, right, of art making. That, of course, you know, due to the pandemic, we are limited. There are limitations. But I love how artists approach problems creatively. And by using the creative process to really create a new problem, doesn't just change the product, it changes the process. And you guys are going into it so joyfully. I can't help but to feel excited about the products. So, so thank you both for sharing so much about that. Dr. Lazarus, where are you joining us from today?
I am in Frederick in my formerly dissertation station. So I'm down in my basement.
That's right. You're a new doctor, right? So I made to include your title. There you go.
Thank you.
So you're welcome. And so tell us about MTEA. MTEA is a little different, of course, than Adventure Theater and Single Carrot Theater. You guys are the professional association for theater educators. And, you know, what's been going on over down, over, out, next, online with MTEA? And what do you guys have planned for the future for this upcoming season?
Sure. So Maryland Theater Education Association, we've been looking a lot how we can help our members and people who aren't our members yet, but will soon be, on how they can use the bolts and the nuts and bolts of how they can put their performances together in the fall and what they can do, as well as kind of supporting them socially, emotionally, and helping them out as well. So one of the projects that we've been working on is we've been looking at, you know, the idea of doing radio plays, some things that are accessible for K through 12 to put together virtually. And if things do shift, maybe then they can become stage productions, that kind of thing. Really being flexible and accessible and agile for our community. So going down that rabbit hole, we've actually been able to get in touch with lots of the rights organizations and looking at lots of different platforms for ways, and basically doing the research for our members. Wonderful. And what we're doing is we're putting that together for a PD that's going to be late July. So then you have a one-stop shop for all kinds of resources to be able to plan out your production for the fall and possibly into the spring. So even though it's radio and that was our focus originally, it's kind of bloomed into, well, what's it going to look like for a show, whether that's a play or a musical or a workshop show, and what kind of technology can you use and how can you create lessons to teach students about tech parts of like lighting and sound within their homes. So that's one of the projects that we're working on. We have happy hours that we've been doing bi-monthly. Some of them are fun. Some of them provide networking. We've done like some theater trivia stuff, just allowing theater educator artists to be able to get together and network and stress relief and do some self-care as well. We have a couple PD opportunities that are coming up where we've been partnering with different performing arts organizations around the state and allowing them to have a way to reach out directly to theater educators and talk about some of the things they do, but also provide some smaller PD opportunities for that. We're still planning our Thrive event, which is in February.
Your annual conference.
Yes, our annual conference. And then we have, some teacher leadership opportunities and some advocacy opportunities. And we're welcoming people to come in and work with us and, help strengthen theater education around the state as well, and then within local communities. And I'm really enjoying hearing people talking about today about being live in the moment and talking about what's going on in our communities, in our state, and in our nation, and how we are addressing that. And we're having some very similar conversations inside of MTEA and figuring out ways that we can support our community at large to create that kind of really exciting work that has been talked about today. So it's a lot, but I think that anything we do is more than what we were doing before. And that's a really wonderful thing that's happening in our community. And I'm really excited to be part of that.
Absolutely. And we can take so much inspiration from our professional organizations, hearing about what's happening at Single Carrot, hearing about what's happening at Adventure Theater. We have so much to learn from our community partners too, about ways that we can elevate the work that's happening in schools. Emily, will you tell me, there are so many directions that the upcoming season can take. Getting a clear message to stakeholders is such a critical part of planning. So how are you working with your stakeholders to communicate your vision and prepare them for adjustments that may take place along the way?
Yeah, so we're doing our best to set up the season in a safe way so that we don't have to make too many adjustments, but we're also communicating to stakeholders that we want to deliver theater that feels safe, but also relevant. So setting up our audiences to expect that we respond to the current moment, and that may mean adjustments. For example, Single Carrot was working on a new play called We Broke Up, starring Paul Diem, who you saw earlier, that was designed exclusively for a virtual platform. But it became really clear that it would be unsafe to produce, and it really wasn't what the community needed right now. So our stakeholders sort of being aware of that we respond in this way, we were able to take a pause and focus our efforts elsewhere. And I am happy to say it will be produced in the future, so definitely keep an eye out. But I also think that it's important to keep your stakeholders involved throughout the process. I think that Chill was saying, bringing them in for that sort of teaser. But, part of Single Carrot's mission is really working together with the community. And so our partnerships are so important to our mission. So building those partnerships with teachers, with our stakeholders to help inform what the future of our artistic and educational work will be.
That's fantastic. Well, you guys, we've reached the end of our time. I can't believe it went so quickly, but hearing from all three of you, I'm hearing about innovation. I'm hearing, even greater ways of collaboration. I'm also hearing something about just being able to be more effective even during this time by using technology. And as always, it's wonderful and inspiring to talk to all three of you. And we look forward to supporting your work in the future and being there for all of those digital performances. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. That was so empowering to hear about just the creative ways people are using this time to continue to connect, right? Theater is about telling stories. It is about human connection. And so it's wonderful to hear ways that professional organizations are taking that on. All right, we're going to bring up our final panel. Last but not least, we have Brandon Fuller, the theater director / faculty at Northwestern High School, home of the Jim Henson Visual and Performing Arts Academy of Prince George's County. We also have Leon Rothschild, design and production instructor, performing and visual arts magnet at Annapolis High School in Anne Arundel County Public Schools. So great to have teachers from all across the state. Oh, great. We're all here. Hi, Brandon. How are you today?
Good. How are you today?
Where are you joining us from? What town?
I am currently in Prince George's County in Greenbelt.
Greenbelt. And what about you, Leanne?
I am, I'm in Howard County, but I teach at AACPS, the PVA magnet program at Annapolis High School.
Yes. Great. Awesome. Fantastic. So, Brandon, let's start with you. How has remote learning impacted teaching and learning with you and your students?
Well, I believe that distance learning has enhanced my teaching and ability to connect with students. I've spent over a decade in the professional industry working in local and regional playhouses, touring, theme park work, educational workshops before I came into education. With that being said, this is my first year teaching full time, and it will be a year that I will never forget. When we entered a restricted phase, the first question I asked myself was, how am I going to teach my performance classes online? But then I met with a panel of my students and we talked about some different options of how we're going to make it work. The students were open to allowing different technology that allows us to expand our classroom to reach students where they are. I've also noticed that several students who struggled academically in class are excelling online.
Wow.
So I did ask my students if I can share some of their stories with you today. Here is a story from one of my upcoming seniors. Since my school has started online class, it has been harder to motivate myself to work and pay attention. I'm home all the time. I have access to my TV and video games. I find it hard to focus with all of these distractions. I didn't have a schedule until my drama teacher guided us on how to make a schedule for ourselves at home. I missed my drama class. Mr. Fuller made our class so welcoming and fun. When we had our first online class, it was only during the allotted 30-minute time, which was a little strange because it usually was an hour and a half long. Our online assignments were super cool and fun, and I had the opportunity to get my family involved with my assignments. We dressed up in costumes, did makeup, turned our living room into this big set for my performances, and we had fun and got to bring us a little closer because of it. So I realized that my students were more comfortable to be able to step out of their comfort zone in the comfort of their own home. The story also highlights, how we talked about in the first panel with bringing the family members together.
Yes.
It really was a bonding experience for my students.
That's wonderful. Oh, thank you so much for bringing that story into this space. It's so nice to hear from students. I'm also so inspired by the fact that in the middle of a challenge, you turn to your students and you guys work together collaboratively, right? We expect that from theater folks. Right? You guys work as a company to figure out an answer to this problem. How will you continue learning and connection and growing artistically in this time? Wow, thank you, Brandon, for sharing that.
Thank you.
And what about you? How were your students and you impacted by remote teaching and learning?
Well, so I'm fortunate enough to teach design and production in a magnet program. And so my kids are, I would describe them as an unusually hands-on bunch. We spend most of our classes working through curriculum actually to create productions, to build the sets, paint, costume, etc. So I think obviously one of the biggest things was to pull them out of a production scenario. We were 3 days away from load-in. And so it was just a really, really hard stop. And I think a lot of people experienced that. But we in the arts classrooms, and I think it's not just theater, right? We're kind of uniquely poised to be able to create these spaces for kids to work where they're actually valued, where we can meet them where they are and help them to see and celebrate and put their best abilities to use so that they can find value in each other, in their personage and in their work. And so I think one of the biggest hurdles and one of the biggest changes for all of us was to find work that was still meaningful and didn't feel just like busy work. And so you mentioned making a schedule and helping your kids make a schedule to figure out how to organize their lives. In theater, we always talk about how we have such broadly applicable life skills. Well, this was such an example of how to help the kids with that. So we really pulled back from production-oriented training to, okay, how do we manage our own task force? How do we use these digital medias, these tools that we have at our disposal? And I was able to give the kids kind of, I guess we'll call it a little bit of constructive escapism, right? We created projects that were still interesting and exciting to them. But in those projects, we hid other skills like scheduling, like self-assessment, like actually being able to write and articulate your production concept without standing there and being able to show me what it is. How do you speak about it? How do you support it like a research paper? And then connecting those things to their academics. So my kids, I think, really rocked it.
Wow. I mean, what I'm hearing from both of you is the self-efficacy of your students, the mastery attainment of your students just really shot through the roof. By having this opportunity to really have to take control of their educational experience and really drive it, right? And then you're lucky to have you guys as facilitators of that. Talk to me about what's happening this summer. So, we have a long or short summer ahead of us. And what are you guys planning in terms of your professional learning? What are some of the skills that you're wanting to make sure that you're expanding so that you can be prepared for whatever comes next in education in the fall?
After you.
So the first thing that I plan on doing is rest. But after that, I do plan on jumping into some virtual planning, creating lesson plans for both that I can use for both virtual and in schoolhouse learning, and then making some like lesson videos for my kids. But there are actually two opportunities that I want to share with everyone today. The first one is the American Academy of the Dramatic Arts is hosting a drama educator virtual workshop on July 11th. It is a free for any educator, student, or teaching artist. You can sign up on their website by looking up the American Academy of the Dramatic Arts. The second opportunity that I would like to share is the Maryland Arts Summit. This was hosted by the Maryland Citizen for the Arts in partnership with MSDE. This event was held online just a couple of weeks ago, but because of their virtual experience, all of the sessions were recorded and are now archived on their website. I participated in this summit, but I missed out on a lot of opportunities. So now I get to go back and watch those videos and take some notes on them to how I can enhance my education with my students. They have about 10 different tracks, which is super interesting to watch. Some on arts management, independent artists, and arts education, just to name a few. You can go on their website, mdarts.org/summit to watch all of their sessions for free.
We did not pay Brandon to say
I asked permission if I can mention it. She said, go ahead. I'm like, perfect, because it was literally so insightful. I learned so much information during it. So I just literally can't wait to basically watch all of the videos during all my free time over the summer. So to kind of wrap it all up, I was able to learn over this pandemic how to, blow the walls off my classroom, to reduce the restrictions of the time schedule, to improve the content of how I am connecting to the students in the classroom and online, but also allowing students to find their comfort zone and their support system in the household and in their community.
That is really powerful. Thank you, Brandon.
Of course, thank you.
And Leanne, what about your summer? What do you have planned?
Well, first, I have an 18-month-old who's teething, so we're going to spend a little bit of time hanging out with some carrots in the front yard, I think.
That sounds
But after that, my main goal for this summer is I have been given permission, and I'm so excited to do this. We are looking forward to kind of doing more digital integration with our training and teaching in general to help my kids be able to bounce back and forth seamlessly, but also in design and production, there's a lot of opportunity for things like integrated projection design and digital arts and things like that. So a huge push for me this summer is to find out what resources are available to the kids at different levels of accessibility so that I'm not railroading any of my kids out of a learning experience. And to train myself to be fluent in those platforms. And so I've actually been working on a spreadsheet. Someone mentioned in the last panel, sharing resources. I've been working on a spreadsheet. It's a little bit messy, but I'm part of a couple of forums where I've been dumping resources that I found for teaching theater history, theater arts, design, and production, things like that, into a spreadsheet. I'm not going to lie, it's a bit of a hot mess right now because it was on the fly as it was going this semester. But one of my big goals for the summer is to put it together so that it's more readily shared with other people in the community. I just checked, we have over 100 resources in that spreadsheet right now that are all free or cheap for people to be able to access with their kids. So I'm really excited to share that.
I love that. Wow. Yeah, please, when you've put that together, after you've had the carrots, please do send it over to us. We'd be happy to share it. Well,
yeah,
thank
absolutely.
you so much. This was amazing. Just you guys are really a breath of fresh air at the end of this to bring in the energy and vibrant nature of both of your teaching styles, and to hear about the incredible work you did with students is very inspiring. So thank you both. Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Thank you. All right, everyone, we are there. So, we want to make sure that we are supporting teachers in the weeks ahead with professional learning. Again, MSDE is proud to have partnered and worked with the Fine Arts Supervisor Network on a set of recommendations for professional learning. We are moving those recommendations forward. We have 130 new free hours in addition to the wonderful treasure trove of the Maryland Arts Summit. We have 130 new hours of synchronous learning that will take place this summer. So things from 1-hour workshops to 3-day courses that you can build and accumulate hours over the course of the summer to add up to 15 hours for 1 CPD credit, 30 hours for 2, 45 hours for 3, whatever your heart really desires. But we want to make sure that we're continuing to be responsive to the needs of our community and to the needs of all of you as stakeholders. Remember, everyone, that fine arts education is a right, not a privilege. And our response in light of this pandemic is really dedicated to expanding opportunities for all students and providing a more inclusive pathway forward. We hope to see you this summer. Fine arts educators are encouraged to take part in the professional learning that's offered through MSDE, the professional learning that's offered through our professional associations, the professional learning that's offered informally among some of the ways that you as colleagues have been gathering to keep learning, keep working, and we'll get through this together. Thank you all so much. Arts together. Have a great day.